Hey there and welcome back. This is episode number 37. And since we are reaching the end of the year rather rapidly, what I thought would be a cool thing to do in this episode would be to look back and do a bit of reflection and share with you some of the biggest insights or learnings that I've made throughout this year. And hopefully you'll get a lot from these. I think these insights are universal, or at the very least they can help you think about your own insights, your own learnings. So 2024 has been a bit of a weird year for me, if I'm being honest. I've lived in 4 different houses. I've moved office a couple of times. In business, I've experienced a lot of very good things, but it's also definitely been one of the more challenging years. I've started doing dance performances, so I've performed about 5 times, including a couple of really big ones in Rome and Madrid in front of several hundred people. And also my son, who, for those of you who don't know, lives in the Netherlands, is about to become a teenager. How did that happen? So it feels like there's been a lot happening this year and quite a lot of turbulence. But at the same time, and this is the weird bit, it's been one of the most emotionally balanced and happy years that I can remember. And I think the reason why is because I've been doing a lot of self-therapy. Hey, you might go out on a Saturday night and have some drinks, but I stay in and do some therapy in the comfort of my own home. Well, not really, but I'm sure you get the picture. But I have been working on myself a lot, in particular with meditation, but I've also been doing something called the wholeness work, which I started doing roughly this time last year. It was created by Connie Ray Andres, and it's been absolutely amazing. So even though a lot of things have been up in the air, I've felt strangely calm about everything. In the past, I know I would have been a lot more stressed out about it all, but it's just felt much more tranquil, much more balanced. And that's also helped me glean some vital learnings from the year's events. And that's what this episode is going to be all about. I'm going to share the top 4 insights or learnings that I've made throughout 2024. So let's get started. Hey there and welcome to the Stress Less Living podcast. My name is Stephen Burns and I've been a practicing coach, trainer and hypnotherapist for 25 years. Each week I'll share easily digestible bite-sized ideas that you can immediately put into practice so that you can live a more harmonious and balanced life. Because life is challenging, but whatever we encounter, we always have a choice. We can take the easy routes or the hard routes, the low stress way or the high stress way. Well, the Stress Less Living podcast is about always looking for the easy routes in life, the low stress ways to accomplish your goals, get more of what you want, and ultimately live a happy and more effortless life. So if you're looking for the perfect antidote for the chaos of modern life, my friend, you are absolutely in the right place. So, like I said, in this episode, I want to share with you the top 4 insights or learnings that I've made throughout 2024. And hopefully you'll get a lot from each of these insights. I think they are universal, but at the very least, it can help you have a think about what your own top insights and learnings have been throughout the year. So insight number 1, embrace chaotic situations and uncertainty. So in November last year, so roughly 11 months ago, I came home from visiting my son in the Netherlands and I was met by a pretty horrific scene. So to give you some context, I live in an upside down house, so it's a split level house. So the kitchen and living room are upstairs and the bedrooms are downstairs, and so is the toilet and the shower room. So I arrived back, and as I walked into my house, I discovered that there had been a pretty major water leak that had most likely been happening all weekend while I was away. So a hose had burst in my kitchen, which is on the top level. It was completely ruined. The living room floor was also ruined. The downstairs was a complete disaster area. The roof in one of the bedrooms had collapsed, and there was a river practically flowing through my downstairs hallway. So at the time, I absolutely freaked out. I was like, what's going to happen here? How am I going to live? We're coming up to Christmas. This is a total nightmare. So what I did was I phoned my parents, or FaceTimed them in fact. They're usually pretty good at talking me down from the ledge, so to speak. And we talked it through, and at the end of the conversation, they said something that made me stop. They said, you know what? This is nowhere near as bad as it seems. And you know what? They were absolutely right. At the end of the day, I was insured, everything was going to get fixed, and what actually happened was I ended up getting a new kitchen, new flooring in my living room, A completely new bathroom, which looks absolutely fantastic. New flooring in my bedroom, complete paint job, and the house looked absolutely fantastic. And also, and I think this was the really cool part, the insurance paid for alternative accommodation because I couldn't live there while the work was getting done. So I got to live in a new city, and while there was a bit of upheaval because I had to move from place to place, it was one of the most enjoyable few months that I've had in a long time. I've always lived in quite rural areas, so getting to live right in the centre of a thriving, busy city like Glasgow was absolutely amazing. And I've now made a decision that I'm going to be moving there. And all of that came from apparent disaster, from chaos, from complete uncertainty. And the thing is, speaking to other people, this has a tendency to happen quite a lot. That when we find ourselves in quite chaotic, uncertain situations, then usually lots of really good opportunities start to present themselves. That whenever we find ourselves in a chaotic situation, it tends to ruffle things up, it breaks the inertia, it stimulates change. And while that doesn't always feel pleasant, almost always new opportunities will present themselves. So I thought that was a very powerful insight, and if you've personally found that 2024 has been a bit chaotic and unpredictable for you, and you're anticipating more chaos into 2025, then don't automatically assume that that's a bad thing. Really good things can come from chaos, and if you keep an eye out for those, then you can take advantage of them. Insight number 2, failure doesn't actually exist. Now, you're maybe thinking, what is he talking about? What's he been smoking? Of course failure exists. I fail regularly. So let me just clarify for a moment. The concept of failure is real, but it is just that. It's a concept. It's a label that we've decided to attach to something. There's no such thing, really, as objective failure. It's a subjective idea that we've decided to attach to an event that's perhaps not gone the way that we would like it to have gone. So you don't need to attach that label. You don't need to subscribe to it as a concept. That is a choice as to whether you do that or not. There's a famous example, I'm sure you've heard of this before, about Thomas Edison when he invented the light bulb. So apparently it took him 2,774 times to get it right. And he was once asked how he dealt with all these failures, and his reply was absolute gold. He said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've just eliminated 2,773 different ways to not invent the light bulb, which I think gives you a pretty good indication about his mindset. Another great example is James Dyson. So it took him 5 years and 5,126 different prototypes until he eventually created the bagless vacuum cleaner. That guy has some serious resilience. And the thing is, if you listen to him talk about his journey, as it was with Edison, he doesn't see it as failed attempts. Both of them see these apparent failures as vital parts of the development journey. It's just something you do when you're looking to innovate. They literally do not subscribe to the concept of failure at all. It's not part of their vocabulary. So this is one of the biggest shifts for me over the past year. There have been a few things in business that I've done that have worked quite well, but there's a few other things that didn't work quite as well and that required a lot of investment in terms of time from me. There was also one thing in my personal life, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I went into it with a lot of positivity, being very hopeful, and it didn't work out the way I thought it would. In fact, it took a very bizarre twist. I'll maybe talk about that in a future episode. But in the past, I probably would have linked all of these things to my self-worth. It would have knocked me off balance. It would have taken me a little bit of time to get back on an even keel. But this time, it was different. Something big shifted in the sense that I just saw it as a natural and essential part of the journey. And it wasn't until I looked back and reflected on things that I realised what that shift was. It was because all of a sudden, I'd stopped subscribing to the concept of failure. It was no longer in my mental vocabulary. So, to turn the lens back on you, what would it be like if you did the same? If you were to just delete the word failure from your vocabulary, what do you think it would be like? How would you live your life differently? If you genuinely saw all the experiences of your life as essential parts of the learning journey, even the ones that don't work out the way you expect them to, what would things be like? Also, if you want to know a wee bit more about how to deal with failure, then if you want to check out episode number 29, I go into it in quite a bit of depth in that episode. I think you'll get a lot from it. Insight number 3. I am whole before I go after my goals. So this is one that I've preached quite a lot over the years, but up until this year, it's perhaps one that I could have internalized a bit more if I'm going to do a bit of self-critique. So this is the idea that you are completely whole and okay as a person before you go after the things that you want. It's about shifting from needing certain things in your life to wanting them instead. That when we need something in our life, it works from the assumption that if you don't have those things, then you'll be deficient in some way. You've framed it, you've set the game up in a way that makes it a requirement, or those things are requirements, for experiencing a sense of inner wholeness and harmony. But when we want something, it works from the assumption that thing will add something to your life. It becomes an addition rather than something that is there to fill a gaping psychological void. And this is a much stronger base to live your life from, because you get to feel happy and content now, and then even happier when you make progress with your goals. It also makes your goals so much more achievable as well, because you stop being needy and just trying too damn hard. And there is nothing that will repel more than excessive neediness. Are you someone who struggles with work-life balance? You find it difficult to maintain harmony between career ambitions and your personal well-being. You're doing your best to balance demands and deadlines with the other important aspects of your life, but things like burnout, stress, and a nagging sense of guilt seem to forever lurk in the background. Well, one of the best first steps that you can do to create more balance is to do a full life audit. This is a powerful process that helps you highlight areas of your life that are a little bit out of sync, that potentially need addressing, so that you can be more in harmony. So if you want to do a life audit, then I have a free PDF that will take you through the entire thing. To get access to that, please check the show notes. You'll see a link and all the information you need. And I'm sure you know this. Say, for example, you were to lose your job and you start to panic and you come across all needy at an interview. There's a very good chance you're not going to get that job, because neediness gives off a vibe of low status and low value, and this makes you less desirable. It's often much easier to get a new job when you've already got one, which is a wee bit annoying, but it's definitely the truth. So that's the general idea, and it's definitely something that I've subscribed to for a while, mostly, but this year it's become more fully internalised. Like I said at the start of the episode, I've been doing a lot of inner work on myself, especially with meditation. And one of the things I've been focusing on is connecting with what's referred to as core states of being. So there are 3 of these. So love, or deep connection, if you prefer that description, wholeness, or oneness, as some people describe it as, and inner peace. So I've been using meditation to tap into these core states a lot. They are very pure states where you just slip into the moment. They feel absolutely amazing. And it's kind of like how you used to feel when you were a very young kid. These core states were very much to the forefront of our experience back then, but as an adult they seem to disappear into the background, and some people think that they vanish entirely. So I've been using meditation a lot to tap into these states, especially a feeling of wholeness, and the difference has been absolutely incredible. Sure, there's been some ups and downs, but overall I've been experiencing so much more inner harmony and satisfaction, irrespective of the progress I've made with my goals. And I still have the drive, I still have the motivation to go after things, but it's a much cleaner form of motivation. The stress and the fear and the adrenaline is lowered considerably. And I think this ties in quite nicely with what I said at the start of the episode. Even though there's been so much upheaval this year in my life, it's the most amount of emotional harmony and balance that I've experienced in a long time. And I put it down to this meditation practice I've been doing with these core states. So I think this is a universal learning that's important for everyone to make, that just because you have things that you want to accomplish and achieve and acquire, to not have them doesn't mean that you're deficient. You are perfectly okay the way that you are right now. You can experience wholeness right in this moment. And to see your goals, the things that you want from life, as additions rather than prerequisites to your happiness and inner harmony is a much more balanced way to live your life. And finally, insight number 4. Stop spending so much time on things you don't enjoy. Where do I start with this one? So I think the biggest bugbear of mine throughout the year, especially in the first half, has been having to do way more things like admin and video and podcast editing and all sorts of other things I just don't like to do way too often. And look, I'm not in a position to afford a skilled team of assistants who follow me about everywhere I go, who I can delegate every task that I don't like to so I can focus purely on the things I love. But throughout the year, I've definitely been guilty of not delegating and outsourcing tasks anywhere near enough. At one stage, I'd worked nearly a whole week. I'd got to Friday morning and I couldn't remember doing anything that had actually moved the business forward or that had even felt enjoyable. And I was like, wait a minute, something's not right here. This was the reason why I'd quit my job, because I didn't want to be stuck doing things I didn't want to do. And when I sat back and had a think about it, it was because I'd been caught up in a whirlwind of tasks that I didn't want to do, but actually I didn't even need to do. I have this strong tendency to want to get things done, to get them done efficiently, but also properly. So I was just doing them myself, and I had so many different hats on, it was just utterly insane. But of course, there's only so much that one person can do, so I was reaching the stage where I'd spent so much time and energy on the stuff that I didn't want to do, I had nothing left to do the things I actually wanted to do. So thankfully, around about the middle of the year, I recognised this, and I made some changes that took me in a much better direction. Also, I reread one of the best books that I've found on productivity, and that is Free to Focus by Michael Hyatt. I've mentioned it a few times in previous episodes, it's well worth checking out. I'll include a link to it again in the show notes. But he has an amazing section on delegation. The whole book's fantastic, but I think the section on delegation is pure gold. So his big belief is that the reason why people don't delegate or outsource tasks is because they don't know how to do it. Delegation is just this kind of thing that apparently managers should do, or, people should do in general, but there's no step-by-step process that actually teaches you how to do it. So because of that, most people end up with limiting beliefs about it, like no one can do the job as good as me, or I don't have time to delegate, or I've no one to delegate it to, and a few others. So he outlines in the book what he calls the 5 levels of delegation, and when you know them, it tends to eliminate these limiting beliefs. And this was a game changer for me. Now, it's something I'm still working on, but I've definitely made a lot of progress, especially in the second half of this year. And man, what a difference that made. I now have someone who edits the podcast. I've got someone who helps out with video editing. I've got someone who uploads and sends my newsletter, and a few other bits and bobs that I've outsourced. And just handing these things over to someone else was like, what a relief. It just feels absolutely amazing. And the thing is, these people do those jobs better than I do. They enjoy doing them a lot more than I do. And it gives me so much extra time to focus on things that I like and also growing the business. So the whole thing just makes complete sense. And I managed to do it as well on a budget too. It didn't actually cost too much. So it really is a win-win. But I think ultimately the big insight I got from this is just how important it is to spend time on the things that bring you joy, the things that really matter to you, and to limit the amount of time you spend on things that you hate or you're not particularly good at. At the end of the day, time is the most valuable resource that we have. So why spend it on things that don't give you meaning and satisfaction? When I was younger, I used to waste so much time on absolute rubbish, but now I'm reaching the upper echelons of my 40s, then I really do appreciate just how finite and important time is. And while I think there will always be things that we have to do that we don't particularly like, I don't think all of these tasks are going to suddenly disappear or I'm going to be able to outsource them. I think the more we minimise these things, the better. And that's definitely something I'm going to carry into 2025. So to turn the lens back on you, what things are you wasting time on? And how could you limit or even eliminate these from your life? Remember, you only have a certain amount of time and energy, so you do want to be prioritising the things that give you meaning, a sense of purpose, and the things that you actually enjoy. Honestly, I think we often just do these things out of habit because that's the way things have always been. But maybe you should stop doing them, or at the very least limit them. Just a thought. So there we have it, the 4 biggest insights or learnings that I've made in 2024. Insight number 1, embrace chaotic situations and uncertainty. So many good things come from chaos because it ruffles things up, it breaks the inertia, it stimulates change. So keep your wits about you. If things are a little bit all over the place, don't necessarily assume that that's a bad thing. Look out for the opportunities. Insight number 2, failure doesn't actually exist. It's just a concept, it's a label, and you don't have to subscribe to it. And if you look at all the people who are super resilient and who manage to accomplish really big things and get a lot from their life, they literally do not have failure in their vocabulary. So what do you think it would be like if you deleted it from yours? Insight number 3, we can experience a sense of wholeness before we even go after our goals. Just because you want things in life, it doesn't mean that you have to feel deficient as a human being if things don't quite go as planned. You can experience wholeness right now, irrespective of whether you make progress or not. And this is a much stronger and a lot less stressful way to go about things. And insight number 4, stop spending so much time on things you don't enjoy. Often, as I said, we do this out of habit. So what things do you want to limit? What do you want to eliminate? And how can you go about doing that? And what things do you really want to spend time on? Remember, time is the most important resource that we have, so you want to use it wisely. So that's my top 4 insights for the year. What do you think? What would be your top 4? Also, if you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you're feeling particularly generous, it is the time of year for giving. After all, we're approaching Christmas. Then I would love it if you could leave a review. It really does help get the word out. So once again, thank you so much for listening, and I'll speak to you next week.